Thank you very much. Welcome everybody to this webinar, which is the third of a series organized by the Hydropolitics Academy in Ankara-Turkey. And the subject or the title of this webinar is Evaluation of Current State of Infrastructure and Management in the Euphrates Tigris region or basin, sorry. So we have a subtitle which says a roadway from analysis to diplomacy. In the last two webinars, we talked about the general subjects, how what's the importance of water and the relations between the geographical situation and the economic and social and physical conditions of the three riparian states, which are...
You're inside school.
Sorry?
Yeah.
Mute, please.
Mute, please, yes.
Okay. So this webinar, we are hoping this webinar will be talking about or touching upon some more specific subjects that may help us to propose a policy at the end to be presented for the riparian states, namely Turkey, Syria, and Iraq, and maybe Iran at one point. To start with, I would like to invite Mr. Dursun Yildiz, our president at the Hydropolitics Academy, to give us a welcoming speech. So please, Mr. Dursun Yildiz.
Thank you very much. Very briefly, distinguished guests, speakers, and participants to the webinar on water resources infrastructure evaluation in the Euphrates Tigris Basin. It is the third of its kind we at the Hydropolitics Academy of Ankara-Turkey have organized in the last several weeks. Ladies and gentlemen, at the beginning of this important gathering of experts on water resource management and diplomacy, allow me to highlight some of the topics that we see important at this time of rethinking the steps ahead in our region. We at Hydropolitics Academy believe that the efforts of our bilateral states of the transboundary water resources of our region can only be intensified and given momentum by the activities of the scientific community and the organizations that represent the civil interest of our nations. It's also our belief, and I believe are the beliefs of you, ladies and gentlemen, that these times are valuable for our nations in making a joint understanding of the need for an agreed work plan that may lead to an institutional setup. This will utilize the best technological achievements in water resource management and the utilization in agriculture, urban development, and industry. Putting all these developments into action will depend on the contributions you and your organizations can provide. We are happy to hear that some positive steps have been agreed upon in the first International Water Conference that took place last week in Baghdad. One of our distinguished speakers of today, Dr. Martina Klimes, has attended this conference. We expect some further details of these decisions from her. Well, several years ago, Turkey has declared that we are ready to use water resources for peace and stability in the region, based on a water and land management plan and program. I used to be director at that time in DSI, State Hydraulic Works. And I believe that it is our duty as expert civil society and the scientific institutions to help create that an updated program and work plan right now. Our effort in this regard should not be discouraged by the fact that our region has a very dynamic structure, as everybody knows, in terms of political and the social relations that has occasionally led to conflicts between riparians. Instead, these facts must make us more willing to make the best use of the interest of the young population of our region, especially in creating an atmosphere of cooperation in agricultural production, trade, and economic development with regional development project in Nexus approach. I wish you luck, our dear speakers and participants, in taking benefit of this opportunity and make contributions that may lead to the creation of frameworks for a better future in our region. Welcome again, and the best wishes for a successful webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. We will have 5 speakers for today. Originally, we had them in this order. Prof. Dr. Mara Tignino, and she's a lead legal specialist at the Platform for International Water Law at Geneva. And
Mr. Chairman, your mic is on mute. Okay.
so go back.
Okay.
Prof. Dr. Mara Tignino, and she's a lead legal specialist at the Platform for International Water Law at Geneva. She's also a reader at the Water Hub, Faculty of Law and Institute of Environmental Sciences at the University of Geneva. She will speak about water rights under international law, particularly in conflict-affected regions, the Euphrates Tigris Basin as an example.
Many thanks. I think we agreed that Dr. Yeah.
Yes. I will say that after I present all the speakers, please. Dr. Martina Klein, also she is advisor on water and peace Transboundary Water Cooperation Department in Stockholm International Water Institute. And her topic is Towards Sustainable Cooperation in Euphrates Tigris region, Water as a Dialogue Entry Point.
Sorry for Martina. There is one word missing there. Klimas.
No worries at all. No worries.
Okay, I will take care of that. We have Dr. Fadi George Comer. He's water diplomat and international negotiator, specialized in the Middle East region, member of the French Overseas Academy of Sciences and Water Academy in France. He's president of UNESCO's IHP Council. His topic is Intergovernmental Hydrological Program Strategy. Mr. Azam Al-Wash, he's a founder and CEO of Nature Iraq, member of the Board of Trustees of the American University of Iraq at Sulaimani. His topic is a general evaluation of the water infrastructure in the Euphrates Tigris Basin. And last but not least, we have Dr. Frederick Michael Lawrence. He's a senior senior lecturer at Jackson School for International Studies at the University of Washington at Seattle, United States. His topic is the role of Turkey in promoting integrated development in the Euphrates Tigris Basin. We have asked our main speaker, first speaker, Professor Dr. Mara Tignino, to allow us to take the first speaker as Mr. Alwash, because he has some commitments. He has to leave early, and she gratefully.
I think it would be Fadi, not
Fadi, not Alwash. Yeah.
You can have me last. I don't care. I'm here to learn.
Why? You change your mind?
No. I mean, not Azam. Dr. Fadi will speak first. Dr. Fadi.
Dr. Fadi will speak first?
Yes, yes, of course.
Sorry, I understood that Dr. Azam is speaking first.
No, Dr. Fadi.
So we will have Dr. Fadi George Kumer. Please, go ahead, sir.
Thank you so much, and I'm really sorry for this big turmoil that I have caused to you. The reason is that I'm in Dubai and taking a plane this afternoon. This is why I wanted to pass first so that I can catch my plane at 6 o'clock. Now it's 3:15 in Dubai. So I would like first to thank Dr. Mara Tignino for letting me taking the floor now, and I would like also to congratulate the Hydropolitics Academy and my friend Dr. Dursin for inviting me. I recall that 2 years ago we were at the French Senate, the initiative that I organize every year at the French Senate on hydro diplomacy and climate change, with Senator Olivier Cadic representing the French of citizen at overseas. And we had a very important conference at that time on mainly the same subject. Dr. Hassan Janabi was present, the Minister of Water in Iraq, and some other prominent figure as Mr. Jean-Louis Oliver, the Secretary of the Water Academy that I welcome also. I just saw him in the webinar. And Martina, Mrs. Climes were with us also, Martina Climes at the French Senate, and I welcome her also. And Martina is doing a perfect job at CIWI. Thank you so much for inviting me. And my talk will concern the strategic plan of the 9th phase of IHP UNESCO, which will start from 2022 till 2029, and it concerns the next decade. And the title of the water strategy that we are actually implementing is Science for a Water Secure World in a Changing Environment. I would like to ask the Secretariat if they can share it on my screen, please. Thank you, Chair. Thank you so much. So why I wanted to present our strategy for the next decade. As you know, IHP is the Intergovernmental Hydrological Program of UNESCO. And at present, the whole world is faced with scarcity of the quality of resources and the pressures induced by the global changes. We have disruption of the climate. We have the problem of water security and demand management situation. And all those problems are becoming very worrying. So the 9th strategy, in fact, identify key water priority area targeting the Agenda 2030. And those key water priority area are 5 key priorities. The first one are the scientific research and innovation. The second one is the water education in the fourth industrial revolution. The third priority is the bridging of the water knowledge gap. And number 4 is the inclusive water management under condition of global changes. And the fifth priority is the water governance, which is based in our strategy on science for mitigation, for adaptation, and resilience. So those 5 priority that has been recorded in our IHP UNESCO strategy can be of a big help for any policy that we are aiming to implement on any transboundary basins such as the Tigris and Euphrates. And this is what the Chair Kamal and Professor Yildiz were introducing in their introduction. The particularity of this strategy is this strategy, first of all, has been identifying the water-related priorities for the member states. And the member states, as you know, of UNESCO are all member states that are representing actually their country. And we have Turkey as a member state in the council, we have Iraq, and we have some other country related to transboundary rivers. The particularity is that strategic plan number 9 will be coupled with an operational implementation plan with a financing strategy. So my recommendation is that if the Academy would like to present a policy for the Tigris and Euphrates, it should be also, it should follow, it is recommended to follow an operational and implementation plan with a financing strategy targeting, of course, infrastructure. So the approach of the strategy is to outline compelling and strategic forces of the IHP UNESCO for the period of 2022-2029 and to represent a methodological response towards transdisciplinary target aimed to generate solution. So what we aim is to generate solution for a water secure world in a highly complex context. And I think that this is what the Hydropolitics Academy is aiming also. The priority 1, scientific research and innovation, concerns the development of hydrological science and research that has provided practical knowledge and information for society about the water fluxes, about the water transport, about the water management. However, increasing and uncertain environmental changes demand for a continued effort on research, innovation, and application. We need scientific research that incorporate the human interaction with nature in the context of water science and management problem that could provide fundamental feedback to water resource management, along with the application of new tools, such as new technological tools that Chair Kamal and Dr. Yildiz has also introduced in their introduction speech. And it also talk about the application of new approaches and new technologies that should be used in order to stop the water wasting. And this is highly essential. So we pass now to priority number 2. Priority number 2 concerns the water knowledge, concerns the water education, and the fourth industrial revolution. And we all know that the success of Agenda 2030 for sustainable development and water-related SDGs, especially the SDGs 2, 6, and 7, which concern water, energy, and food, targets and depends on profound transformation of human values, and consequently, the human behavior and activity should also be targeted, and which impacted our life by taking, for example, the example of the pandemic, COVID-19. So it happens that it started by a small epidemic and then it becomes a big pandemic, and this pandemic affected and impacted directly the water resources in the world and also in the Middle East. So we need more water in order to secure the human being. Achieving that end can only be worked when society recognizes the need to reintegrate itself with nature in a way to enhance common understanding of the importance and limits of our natural resources based on improving the quality of our life. We think that we are going to the limit of the water usage in the world. And this behavior is not a very sustainable behavior when we look to Agenda 2030. We need to rely on water education, and we need also to rely on tools that encourage the engagement of all the sector of society to adopt a sustainable consumption and production pattern. Let's go and see priority number 3, which is the most important one for starting negotiation, cooperation, mediation, or maybe also starting implementation plan for transboundary infrastructure. We need to bridge the data knowledge gap with transparency and accessibility to data as the main pillar for sustainable advancement of open science, occurring commitment to UNESCO. And UNESCO is, IHP is a diplomatic scientific hub, and you can use this diplomatic scientific hub in order to reinforce the data knowledge gap and to bridge between the country these data knowledge gap. An appropriated data network needs to be established in order to enable the data access from transboundary sources to all interested users. So this is the priority area number 3 of our strategy for UNESCO. And priority 4 is to start by implementing inclusive water management under global changing conditions. We all know that healthy, clean rivers, lakes, wetlands, aquifers, and glaciers do not only provide safe water, but also it supports agriculture. And this is a main item for the Tigris and Euphrates and other transboundary water, also river. It supports hydropower, it supports industry, it supports communication and transport of goods. So integrative approach perspective using the nexus of water, energy, and food also means to achieve the water security at the governmental level. And this was a part of our talk 2 years ago at the French Senate. So let me now pass to the fifth priority, which is water governance. And I can say only 2 words about this priority. If we succeeded in implementing negotiation cooperation on the 4th priority key area that I have presented to you, and we don't fulfill a success story on governance, we won't be able to achieve any strategy on any transboundary river. This is why the way forward of the IHP water strategy should tackle an implementation mechanism. And this implementation mechanism with a concrete planning upon several years could be the key success of any policy that we would like to implement on transboundary river basin. And my recommendation and suggestion as a conclusion is that since we are asking all the water family to participate on the water strategy of UNESCO, I would highly recommend that the Academy, the Hydropolitics Academy, and the prominent speakers who are in this panel, as SIWI, as the Geneva Water Hub, as Dr. Lawrence from Washington University, all the prominent speakers and experts, I invite them to take part in the implementation of this strategy. And we will be, the chair of UNESCO will be open to any suggestion that you would like also to give us so that the implementation of those identifying key elements can actively contribute and provide to a success leadership from the club of water that we represent in any transboundary negotiation or mediation or cooperation plan on transboundary river. And one of these plans is the Tigris and Euphrates. And I wish the most of the success of the work that you are doing in order to achieve such a policy. I would like to thank you, to thank Chair Kamal, to thank Dr. Dursin for inviting me to this panel. And I would like also to congratulate the prominent effort that has taken place in this panel and the input that they will give us in order to achieve this success story. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Would you like to maybe to ask any question before I will dismiss myself?
Yes. Thank you very much, Dr. Fadi Kumer.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think your speech or your presentation had saved us a lot of time in trying to understand the comprehensive subject of water management in the Euphrates, and that maybe that is also to thank UNESCO for their effort in this respect and the efforts of other agencies, international agencies who are working on these subjects. Shall we take a question from the audience, please?
May I, Mr. Kamal?
Yes, please.
Dr. Khmer, in the priorities you identified, you talked about the knowledge, the data knowledge gap. So what is the UNESCO's IHP Council is intending to play in forming this network, data network in the region? So is there any identified role, or it's a general, it's a guideline?
In fact, the role, Mrs. Sayer of IHP UNESCO is to compile and to help on establishing data knowledge hubs for the whole world. This is one of the aim of IHP, and we have a division, the division of water at UNESCO. In this division, we have tools and software that all the country could use, and all the river basins, transboundary basin, could also allow to use all the data that we have. And this tool's name is WIN. So the WIN software is highly recognized and very well known. And the first task of IHP is to implement between the countries, riparian country, such cooperation on compiling a very clear data hub, so that if we are targeting any planning, any infrastructure in any transboundary river, those data could be shared, could be used, and could be used in order to plan for future infrastructure. So this is our task. It's not a recommendation. It is one of the role that IHP is doing and playing, with another role, which is also the water culture and the water knowledge and education on these subjects also.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fadi.
Thank you.
Can we move to the next speaker, Professor Dr. Mara Tignino? The floor is yours, madam.
Thank you, Dr. Fadi. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the kind invitation to join this important webinar. That it is really in a crucial moment also for cooperation on this basin. So I was asked to provide a presentation on the meaning of water rights under international water law, in particular using the example of the Euphrates and Tigris basin. So it will be a legal presentation. I hope that it will not be too boring. I will try to keep it short and interesting for our audience. So no, I will start to ask to ourselves, what does it mean when you use this term of water rights? What does it mean, this concept under international water law, and what are the key principles and obligations of international water law, so under customary law? And finally, I will give some examples and good practices that could inspire the states sharing the Euphrates and Tigris basin. So here now you can see a picture of two farmers around the Colorado River that they are fighting around water, and in fact the concept of water rights is especially used in the US practice. And from an international law perspective, we can use the study issued by FAO in 2006. And there is not really a clear definition under international law of water rights, but we can define it as the entitlement to use the water from surface water, but also groundwater resources. And I think that when we talk about the basin approach, it is very important that we don't consider only surface water, but also groundwater resources that provide the most part of water supplies to the communities. And So no, I would argue so that these water rights so should be applicable not only to surface water but also to groundwater resources, and it's an issue not only of quantity of water, so fixing an amount of water that each user can use, but also it is increasingly important to include the river flows, so the flow of the river from upstream to downstream countries, and also the issue of quality. So the quantity and quality of water resources are close connected and should not be separated. And we see in the international practice in freshwater agreements since the 90s that the quality issue, the environmental protection of international water courses is increasingly important. So the water rights, as I said, are legal rights. So no entitlement, the entitlement of use given to an individual, to a community, to use the water from a water course, a lake, or an aquifer, and the water rights should be distinguished from the human right to water, so that it is a different issue, and we can talk later about the issue of the human right to water, but should not be confused with the concept of water rights. So in the case of water rights applicable to so the entitlement of using water from transboundary resources, in this case it came there is the issue of international water law. Now, when we are talking about water rights under in rivers that are only domestic, so that are not crossing political boundaries, water rights are under the framework of domestic law. But when we are talking about water rights of uses of international water courses, here international water law is applicable, and it comes in the play. And so what does it mean, international water law? So international water law is a branch of public international law, and we can we can view this area of international law as a specific set of rights and rules, but beyond the specific rights and obligation applicable to the use of transboundary water resources, this branch of international law is also connected to other areas of international law, like human rights, international humanitarian law, investment law, so different set of areas of international law. But when we look at the particular field of international water law, we can see we can say that the basis of these rights and obligation is in the notion of restricted territorial sovereignty. So what does it mean? It means that a state, of course, has the right to use the water resources that are crossing its territory, but in using using this right of using water resources, this right is also limited by the sovereignty of the other states that are neighbors of him. And so we can say that this right to use water resources is limited to the obligation not to cause a significant damage to another riparian states. So this is really the basic rule of international water law, based on the concept of restricted territorial sovereignty. And this principle, so the theory of the restricted territorial sovereignty, it is at the basis of many declarations, treaties, case law, no, I will not talk to, I will not discuss today, but we can mention later. And so it is really not the basis of the codification of international water law. And here, no, I give 3 examples. So the first example, it is the Helsinki rules on the uses of waters of international rivers of 66, that is considered as the first codification of international water law before the emergence of specific treaties. So it was really from the 60s that it came the importance to develop a codification of international water law. And so here I mentioned the 2 examples of global instruments, the UN Water Courses Convention of 1997 and the UNECE Water Convention of 1992, that many provisions codifies customary law, but not the entire set of provisions can be considered as a customary international law. So we have also soft law instruments, we will talk later about that, but I think it is important also to mention them, since the Sustainable Development Goals, in particular, the target 6.5.1.2 are really related to transboundary water cooperation and can be used by countries, including the countries sharing the Tigris and Euphrates basin, to guide their cooperation with the support of the custodian UN agencies that are UNESCO and the UNECE. And so what are the core principles and obligations of international water law? So I will not go too much in detail, but 2 main principles that govern the sharing of water resources are the principle of equitable and reasonable use and the obligation not to cause a significant harm. Now, the balance between these 2 principles was for many years considered as problematic and really an issue of conflict between riparian states, but I think that increasingly, it is we can see that increasingly, the obligation to cause a significant harm should be considered as a criteria for the equitable and reasonable use of transboundary water resources. So, I use an equitable and reasonable use cannot be in its essence causing a damage to a riparian states. Then we have also the obligation to protect the ecosystems of transboundary waters, and here, as I said, the quantity of water cannot be dissociated from the quality, and we will have also a presentation about this. And we have all a set of procedural obligations, like the obligation to notification and exchange of information that it was already mentioned by Dr. Komar, so the importance of the exchange of technical data. And so when we talk about the principle of equitable reasonable use, of course, like a criticism that is often made, it is, but this is a general vague principle. But we have some criteria that can be used to define what does it mean the equitable and reasonable use, and the UN Water Courses Convention provide some criteria that can be used, and I think that the principle of equitable and reasonable use really depends on the specific circumstances of each basin. So we should not consider a priori the definition of equitable reasonable use, but applied in a specific context. And so if we see this principle in relation to the Euphrates and Tigris basin.
Nino, can I interfere here? Can you finish in 5 minutes more?
Yes, okay. We have is considered as a part of customary international law by several judgments, and we have also an example that can be used in the stop of the filling of the Ilisu dam, the first filling of the dam. Regarding the obligation not to cause a significant harm, I would like just to stress that this is a requirement of due diligence, so it is an obligation of conduct and not of result, and it is also part of customary international law. Regarding the protection of ecosystem, of course, when we think about Tigris and the Euphrates Basin, the issue of the Mesopotamian marshes is it is one of the most important issues from the side of the environmental protection. And my recommendation, it is really not to include in any agreement, in any global agreement on and the Euphrates Basin, to have this ecosystem approach. We have a set of procedural obligations, so we can talk later about this. Here you can see more details about them. And here, I would like also to stress this peculiar, this crucial moment about the cooperation between Turkey and Iraq and the memorandum of understanding. I think Martina will tell more about what is the commitment of the entry into force of the MOU in the next weeks. And we have also a joint technical committee that it was established. So to finish with some optimism, we have some examples and good practices of in the management of water resources, and we have several good examples, but I choose these two, in particular between Mozambique, South Africa, and Swaziland, about the Nkomati and Maputo water courses. I thought that this was a relevant examples because we are also talking about two water courses, so the Nkomati and Maputo, that can be, so we are in a similar context with the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers. And another example is the case of the Sava River Basin, that it was an agreement that was really the sign of the beginning of cooperation between the riparian countries of this basin after an armed conflict in the Balkanic region. So many thanks. Sorry if I was too long. Thank you.
Thank you. Will you stop the sharing, Doctor?
Comprehensive speech. Yes, please.
Yeah.
Can we have a comment or a question, maybe from Dr. Suha Umar?
Well, I can only commend Ms. Tignino for her excellent presentation. Also, Mr. Fadi for his presentation. They were both very informative for everybody. And one small comment, I wish the water issues and any related issue could be left for solution to the experts instead of politicians. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Great. Thank you. Azam. Yes.
Azam, please. You have a comment?
I mean, I do agree that if you leave the solutions to technical people, we would not have a problem. We would have reached an agreement in this region a long, long time ago. So with that in mind, knowing that the solution is political mainly, and in previous seminars, we had talked about the lack of political will. My comment or my question is in regards to the ecosystem obligations, the protection of ecosystem obligations, and specifically that Iraq used to use the Euphrates and the Tigris for navigational purposes at some point in time in the past, beyond, of course, the Mesopotamian marshes that you have talked about. So if I was an Iraqi negotiator intent on creating problems and not reaching a solution, I will stick to the international law and Iraq's historic right to these under international law, which of course is a no-starter from Turkey. So I want to, warn experts such as ourselves that when we talk about international law, let's be very clear. International law is only applied on the weak. It's not applied on the strong. Let's not mess about. This is a reality. And so anybody that wants to stop an agreement between Turkey and Iraq can accuse the negotiators from the Iraqi side that do not protect the historic rights by treason. And of course, that will make an agreement impossible. So let's be very clear as to what does it mean to protect the Mesopotamian marshes. The Mesopotamian marshes, ladies and gentlemen, depended on the flood cycle of the Tigris and Euphrates. That is part and parcel of why they lasted 7,000 years as the key biodiversity engine of the region. Floods are no more. Dams are here for the next 100, 150 years until the reservoirs are full. So if I was an Iraqi negotiator intent on not reaching an agreement, I will stick to the fact that you need to return the floods to the marshes, which is non-starter as far as Turkey is concerned, unless there is a good reason for Turkey to come into the table. So let's be very clear when we talk about international law. Let's understand the limitation of international law. It's all good and well, but let's be realistic. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Azam. I think using waterways for transportation is also one of the issues. As you mentioned, the marshes in the south of Iraq have been affected by the lack of enough sustained water in the rivers. And
I didn't even mention the salt wedge going up Shatt al-Arab. I mean, there's a lot of ecosystem complications.
Yes. But also the quality of the water at the end of the Tigris and Euphrates.
Come on, the point I want to stress
could be sorry, but it could be also related to certain misuses on the Iraqi side as urban surplus water or this
absolutely
discharged water.
I am not claiming that Iraq is, in fact, I know that Iraq wastes water. The problem is there are people who do not want a rapprochement between Turkey and Iraq, right? This is politics. This is real. This is real politics, right? And so if I don't want rapprochement, I will accuse anybody that sits down with Ankara and talks about reaching an agreement with treason. And I have international law behind me saying Iraq has this historic right. Do you understand? I want everybody to understand the limitation of international law. That is the only point that I want to make to Ara and all the experts.
Okay, but it's always a starting point for sitting on the table with goodwill and try to negotiate details under the umbrella of the international law. Now, shall we go to the next speaker?
May I just say one word?
You have a comment?
May I just say one word?
Omar, yeah.
Yes, I completely agree with Mr. Azam. And I would like to say just if some are not willing, Turkey and Iraq, come to an agreement or a rapprochement of these two countries, then I think we should be well aware of it and try to make it, both of us, by excluding others who do not want us to have a rapprochement. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay. But sometimes the data and information is not there, so it doesn't help the politicians to take a good decision. Can we go to the next speaker, Dr. Martina Klimes from Stockholm, please.
Hello, good afternoon. I must say, I've really enjoyed listening to the two presentations. I can say that CVV hosts the UNESCO Category 2 Center called the International Center for Wutu Cooperation. And we are actually going to be implementing the UNESCO strategy. We've just had several meetings on that. And on the other presentation, I always very much enjoy listening to Mara. And I should say that University of Geneva actually offers an excellent course in international Wutu law, that anyone can take. I think it runs every semester, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe Mara can clarify in a chat. And I've taken this course several years ago, extremely well put together, very informative. And I think it's really targeted on practitioners to get a better understanding on these complex issues and terms. And of course, we know that international law, it's a particular animal, but it's very good to actually have a better understanding of the legal terms, which are often flown around in different discussions. So it's a little promotion. I'm an alumni of that course, and I really did enjoy it, and it's very informative. So if you do not know what to do next semester, next academic semester, I warmly encourage you to try to apply for the course. But I will talk to you about something that we define as a sustainable cooperation. And what we say is, how do we bring words into action? And first, I would like us to really reflect on the context in which we work. And now the whole world has slowed down because of the COVID-19 pandemic, but we are dealing with much bigger challenges that of course is connected to subsequent economic recession, but also to climate change and then biodiversity collapse. And when we are looking at the Euphrates and Tigris region, we really have to think that the Middle East, the whole region, is more affected by these climate changes, as you all know. While the global projections are 1.5 Celsius, the Middle East can face up to 3 Celsius. Projections also do say that by 2050, there will be 50% less water available in the whole MENA region. It means the region is immensely dependent on import of food. It used to be the breadbasket of the world. And now, for example, Iraq imports most of its food. And at the same time, we have a growing young population. We have lots of young people who actually are growing up without facing these difficult challenges, without a hope. We have many people who will lose jobs in the agriculture sector because of climate issues, because of water scarcity and extreme weather events. So when we talk about water cooperation, it's very important to think about it in the context. As you all know, this is not an isolated incident. It does not happen on its own. And I was very interesting that I listened to what President Erdogan actually said yesterday when he talked about that Turkey is also facing severe problems and it's becoming a water scarce country, but yet he still mentioned the need to share water with the neighbors, and he mentioned all the riparian countries in the Euphrates and Tigris region. So I think that this is something, it shows us that actually, and this is also something that I did here as at the Baghdad conference, which I had the pleasure to attend in person. The politicians in the region are very much aware of these challenges. I could say that I believe that they understand these waves in a much better way than politicians in my part of the world. And I think this is something that's very important to note. And here we have to think, and of course this is very difficult, we have so many other challenges. How do we bring these shared risks into shared opportunities? And if we look at it, again, when we think about the context, we have different instruments. As a soft instruments, the SDGs were mentioned, different very specific goals. And the transboundary water cooperation is greatly going to be changed by the climate-related impacts. And that also does impact the security setting of the whole region, because first, there will be less vital resources available. There will also be a very vulnerable group of people whose vulnerability will be exploited by different actors. We also have actors from outside of the region who are very interested in, or who are already in, and who are seeking to their own, advancing of their own security situation based on the regional problem. So it's very important to really think we do have several proxy wars in this region. The region also has suffered, particularly some countries, with a great brain drain from the region. At the same time, we have a lot of young people who are facing unemployment, who are facing a future without any hopes. And then in this very difficult context, we are asking, or we are hoping that the politicians will make a lot of compromises on a very difficult issues that are difficult not because they are technically difficult, but they are politically difficult. And that is important to keep in mind and really put everything that we think about into this context. And then, of course, I think many of you probably have seen this picture, but just to remind us that we have we have 40% of global population who is dependent on waters from transboundary rivers, and yet 60% of these rivers lack any form of cooperative management framework or agreement. And why am I stressing this here? And I'm showing you this picture that I think many of you have seen many times. It is really to think, just think what will happen when we will not know how much water will be available in our systems in the future because of changing climate, because we don't know how fast these changes go. We do have some scenarios, we do have some projections. And that's why the data that Dr. Fadi was talking about are so important. But we really need to know how then this will change the behavior of the actors who have to make these decisions when facing this great uncertainty. We either turn it into an opportunity or we turn it into a risk. And something that we see as a possible process, how to approach these challenges, it's what we call water diplomacy. And I think water diplomacy is extremely multidisciplinary field. If I would ask each one of you what water diplomacy means to you, everybody would give a little bit different answer. There is not like a one strict definition. And so for us, it's important just to reflect. We see water diplomacy as a process. It is a process that helps us establish or strengthen cooperation over shared water resources. It's important to acknowledge that this happens on multiple levels. And it's very important aspects are these formal and informal tracks. And if I have time, I will give you an example of one specific informal track. And then it's very important that it relies on the data. And we can have it can happen on different scales, both subnational and regional. And then if we look at this, I would like to explain it on this image. What we need and why we need this data, we need to create a shared knowledge of these future challenges. And I can say that there's been several initiatives in the Euphrates and Tigris region that actually succeeded in this. CV was implementing together with an organization called Equitable based in Dubai, a project called Collaborative Program Euphrates and Tigris, which actually brought together government experts from, at one point actually from 4 countries in this space, who then were jointly looking into doing possible scenarios, hydrological modeling, climate change modeling, into establishing a shared knowledge of what happens in the region and how the region can be assessed if it had no political borders. Because that also changed which part is better for hydropower, which part is better for agriculture production, so just like thinking about this in a different way. Of course, for that, it's important to bring these people in a safe space meaning that they feel that they can really comment on these issues without being restrained by formal positions of their countries, when they can really explore. We do know that there are different arguments. We do know that there are challenges in the downstream countries for the water efficiency. We also know that there are other challenges along the way. And very important is that everybody creates this shared knowledge, because that can lead into a shared vision that we need for what are the changes, what are the possible shared investments, how can we jointly manage this region, that we can create shared benefits and we can really become more resilient for what is coming. So we talk about it that we have this, we do it under the track 2. And then what we found out, and this is really what was this intermezzo discussion, that we really need to focus on creating this political will. As we said, it's very easy if we bring only technical experts to find a solution. But what is quite difficult, but now some important progress has been made, is how do we bring the politicians to really do these very difficult compromises and reach some compromise and have this political will to possibly achieve a framework agreement for the whole region that can really navigate all these countries into the future and into a more resilient future. So for that, we really find out that it's very important to have these middlemen and middlewomen who help to translate this very complex technical knowledge and who have the eye and ear of the decision makers. And I know many of you work with different projects, many of you are very much involved. Just think about it, if you know these champions, who are these, and how they can be used, or how they can be engaged in different processes to really help with that they do understand these very complex technical studies, they do understand also the technical challenges, and at the same time, they can simplify these very complex messages into something that the politicians can understand, and understand in a way that they can see the opportunities. They can see the opportunities for shared visions. And here I would like to say that I personally believe that the processes that have happened in the Euphrates and Tigris from 2013, 2015 until now helped very much in creating the current fairly positive climate between Turkey and Iraq. We see that after when there was a political will from the minister, at that time it was Hassan Janabi, from 2016, it led to the fact that the MOU from 2014 was ratified in Iraq. And then later, because there was established some collaboration between the countries, there was also these joint technical committees. And then the countries did continue working together on these shared issues and shared challenges, despite the other political issues that the two countries have that are not water related, that we could see movement toward positive movement forward. And we really saw will on both sides. We did see that the will, for example, with the stopping of the filling in 2018 when Iraq was facing drought. But we also saw continuous meetings of these technical experts and commissions. And this is something that doesn't really make headlines. We often see headlines like future water wars, but we don't see meetings like they agree to have these 50 experts on each side who will jointly work together on finding better solution. So this is also, these types of news are considered by the general media very boring. We don't really see that there is we don't increase this public awareness about these very tedious, slow processes that actually do lead into something positive. And that's what we've seen in the region. So in this, if we were to sum it up, we see that when we think about trends in water diplomacy, and when we think about trends in water diplomacy with particular focus on this region, we see that context matters very much. It very important where of course the geopolitical constellation of the region, impact of other processes not related to water, and also support for this general cooperation. It's very important because for the decision makers to feel safe that they can really promote these types of cooperation. I can use examples from many parts of the world when there is it's very difficult for the decision makers because of a very polarized public feeling about water cooperation, that it's very difficult to come out with any out-of-the-box solution, for example. So here context matter, and here I think both sides really did their best and they really tried to find a solution. We also need inclusive processes. I do know that maybe there is a room for improvement for involving non-state actors in this space, and I think that that definitely can come along the road. I know that there's been a lot of important work done. Yes. By different, I'm looking forward to hearing more about that. On that. But of course, there's been also a lot of work done by different think tanks, a lot of work by these. And with the inclusive processes, it does not mean only including, for example, use in different platforms. It's ensuring gender equality, but it also is ensuring those who actually can affect political will and who may not necessarily normally be part of these processes, yet who have immense influence on the future. And the last one is really very important about communication and public awareness. There is a lot of disinformation about both the water cooperation, about some of the key individuals who are actually working with these processes. We've seen that in the past, maybe less in the future, but that happens, that always happens when there is a process which is sensitive. You always have possibilities for disinformation campaigns. There's a lot of disinformation also related to the causes of drought. We've seen that this has been exploited by armed groups, for example, when they were recruiting farmers that they would go and exploit the causes of the drought. So very important to think about this, and very important for also you who work in this sphere to really think about how can we communicate better towards the public and explain the benefits of transboundary water cooperation, explaining how can we jointly face the future challenges and become more resilient. I think that this will be the last slide, and on how can we work towards sustainable cooperation. I would like to summarize it. In my view, there are these 4 points, and that really is the political will. We have to explain the benefits of the cooperation. We have to really get some champions among the decision makers who will really see that this is important and this needs to be advanced. We need to turn this shared risk into shared opportunities. Very important inclusive processes, have everybody included who should be included, and then really try to institutionalize the process, because here at the moment what I've heard in Baghdad is that the current constellation is one of the best that we've seen in a long time. And then we do know that the elections are planned in Iraq for maybe this year, maybe it will be postponed. It is planned for this year, but it can be possibly postponed. So how can we institutionalize the current process? And we do have the MOU, and there is a lot of happening. There's this joint research center, there is an exchange, there's very good communication. So really to see how can we ensure that this will survive even if there is a political change on either side. And how can we either expand it? How can we involve additional stakeholders? How can we involve, for example, NGOs who have maybe in some cases better awareness of a situation on the ground in some cases, and maybe concerns on some of the vulnerable communities. So I'd be happy to answer questions if you have. I think I will stop now, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you.
Okay, Dr. Kleins, thank you very much. Your speech has been very informative and very straightforward. I thank you for that. And you are also committed. The timing was good. Thank you. Do we have any questions from the audience? Mr. Azam, please, or Dr. Azam?
Martina, I have nothing really to disagree with you on. Absolutely, you're right on top of it. But what I would like to point out for the second time is that geopolitics is missing from the presentations that and the discussion in general. I will point out that. Okay, that's all I want to say.
Can I just answer to that? You know, this meeting is being recorded. Maybe this will be broadcasted. I do work in this field, and if we had this meeting in person, you can have a very different kind of system. Okay. It's very difficult to say, to talk more about geopolitics in this region, when the meeting is being recorded. And so this is
well, the point that I'm trying to make is that theory aside, this is a subject that is very, very susceptible to the various balance of power that exists in this region. So, we can continue to talk in theory, but if we don't consider the geopolitics, it's our time that's being wasted.
One thing I would say is I see a lot of focus on this region only on the relation between Turkey and Iraq, but you also should know that Iran is a very important actor. And for example, when we talk about marshlands, a lot of the rivers that actually go to marshlands, then I would believe that in some cases it's over 50% that is coming from Iran. So I would love if in the future, when we have these kind of meetings and seminars, if there could be a speaker from Iran who could maybe really explain their position and maybe why it's difficult to reopen talks.
The honest truth is that we need to not talk about bilateral relationship between Turkey and Iraq. We need to talk about trilateral, and hopefully maybe in Syria when Syria gets taken out.
Yep. So thank you.
Maybe I would ask one question to Martina.
Absolutely.
Martina, it was very informative, very good presentation. Thank you very much. Really, I got a lot of points from your presentation. And shared vision, you said shared goal, but I would add unity of effort to be successful on this matter. How can we succeed to unity of effort?
I think first very important step is to really establish that we do want the same thing. I think overall, of course, we want a peace and stability and security and prosperity and resilience. But when we look deeper, each country has a little bit different concerns. And I think that's also legitimate because they have different needs, they have a different situation. But really, like, how do we take that from the unity and how do we build some shared goals on that? And as you say, of course, the situation with Syria, with Iran is very much affecting the ability for us to really think more holistically about the whole region. Because if there should be a very comprehensive framework agreement, it's probably all of these actors need to be involved. So, and then with that, you have a lot of other dimensions that come into play because, you know, it's
just like geopolitics.
Absolutely, and you have other actors who are interested there.
Yeah, Azam has mentioned it. After that, I asked this question, Martina.
But you know that there are actors who benefit from this region being unstable. There are certain actors who benefit from that, and then we should really think, who are they? How are they contributing? You know, what is happening? And this is, I would say, very difficult to say in an open and recorded discussion, but I do hope that one day we can meet and we can really have a part B, you know.
That's why I love being an NGO and not a governmental entity.
Yeah.
I can put my back off.
Thank you, Martina. Thank you.
Pass the mic to Dr. Azam Alwash, please.
I have not made a presentation. I have been asked to talk about the infrastructure.
You are free to say whatever you like.
I will take very little of your time. With respect, I'll focus on Iraq specifically because it is the downstream end, and it is, in my opinion, one of the most brittle or susceptible to all the dangers that have been pointed out by the previous discussants. The Iraqi management of water historically has been based on management of flood control, protecting cities against floods. That's in the days when the Tigris and Euphrates waters were. There's somebody that the microphone is having feedback. Please mute. And so the culture in Iraq is based on too much water. Well, in fact, we're a desert. And so there is a variance between reality and history. And there is all sorts of effects that have just been coming through over the past 50 years, 60 years, as the modern dam building era began. So instead of, and we've covered this subject in many different webinars, so I don't want to waste all your time. I just want to set your mind to the mind frame of the frame of mind of Iraqi engineers that are in charge of water, be it in the water ministry, i.e. management of floods and distribution of water for irrigation in the south of Iraq by moving water, which is where we actually lose a lot of water through bad management or let's say dated management methods. For example, Iraq loses 8 billion cubic meters of water to evaporation from flood control structures, i.e. artificial lakes, because of the fact that the temperature is very high, we're a desert, and the reservoirs are very shallow. So the simple solution to the management to eliminate the problem is actually to reach an agreement between Turkey and Iraq on how to manage this water and store Iraqi water, as it were, in Turkish dams. That's simple. Technically speaking, it should be done and it should be easily implemented, but it doesn't happen. Why? Because of the geopolitics that I'm talking about, and in fact, the different interests. Now, water supply in Iraq used to be one of the better ones in the Middle East. Water you have water treatment centers in major cities, and water is distributed in networks. And we had a very good modern structure. All our towns used to have towers that stored water, and all the networks were pressurized. One result of the Iraq-Iran war is that the war planes targeted high water tanks. As a result, Iraq put the water in underground and installed booster pumps, which are dependent on electricity. And of course, being engaged in war over the past 40 years and 50 years and sanctions and all that, all the networks that have been placed in major Iraqi cities and small hamlets, which used to be really the showcase for the Middle East, are no longer, because of the fact that they have not been maintained properly and the high corrosion rates. And so as a result, the network is riddled with seepage problems. You treat water, you pump it in the network because of the lack of pressure, because of the lack of booster pumps. All houses have pumps, vacuum pumps, as it were. So after the city spends money on cleaning water and putting in the network because of the corrosion and because of the vacuum pumps, guess what? Sewage water gets into the network. And so the water that gets into the home needs to be cleaned up again. That's wasted effort. City like Basra expanded so much over the past 30 years that the design for the networks have been outdated. They cannot ration the water, for example, in Basra, because of the fact that the network has one major circuit. It doesn't have sub-circuits that they can isolate and pressurize different areas. Water drainage in the entire basin is being dumped into the Tigris and Euphrates. And while there was water in the past, dilution was. I'm hearing background voice. So water today arrives in Iraq in Qa'im at around 900 parts per million in the winter, and maybe even as much as 1,500 parts per million. As you all know, the World Health Organization states that water with 1,000 parts per million or more should not be drunk because, in fact, you've got kidney stones. Apparently, the Iraqi kidney stone problem is not that high concern because the Iraqi standards set the water salinity maximum at 1,500, not 1,000 as the WHO. As a result, over the past 20 years, Iraqis have been used to using RO, especially on the Euphrates channel. Now, another problem in Iraq, as if we don't have enough, is the fact that sewage is not really treated. Again, historically, the treatment of sewage has been dilution is the solution to pollution. That was fine when the waters of the Tigris and Euphrates used to be wild. Now they're regulated. Now there is not enough water flow. Low flow to flow, in fact, and we periodically have fish kills on the Euphrates as well as the headwaters of the Tigris in Darbandikhan and Dokan. In the summer, when the temperatures are high, and you have sewage coming into the water, that of course creates bacteria. The bacteria is actively digesting the sewage and depletes the water out of oxygen. And as such, then we have fish kills every now and then. And on the reverse, we have bacteria blooms. The Tigris and Euphrates used to meet or still meet in Qurna, and then they push the water into Shatt al-Arab. Shatt al-Arab flow has to be a minimum of 100 cubic meters per second in order to push the salt wedge and keep the salt wedge of the Gulf in place. That has been a problem, and the problem is actually increasing year upon year, with the salt wedge coming up to the Shatt al-Arab, and that's even before climate change causes the levels of the sea to increase more than they are now. So this is all bad news, right? Well, it could be good news if, in fact, we start thinking of local solutions. On top of that, of all of this, climate change, right? You talked about climate change being a problem. Guess what, ladies and gentlemen? The demand on oil is decreasing. Iraq's budget today, which is a rentier state economy, classic rentier state economy. We sell oil and we buy food. In fact, we used to be the breadbasket of the region. Oil is dying in value. I mean, today it's kind of increasing, and that kind of gives hope to the politicians because it means more budget today. But that's false hope, because we all know that the world is leaving fossil fuels behind. In 10 years and 15 years, the demand for Iraqi oil is not there. And nobody seems to be interested in putting solutions for the future. So when Martina talks about growing population, she's right, spot on. Iraq today is 43 million people. At the rate we're going, by 2030 will be 50 million people. By 2050 will be 80 million people if that's not arrested. What are we going to do? And do we have time to implement it? You talk to politicians, they maybe a few of them are aware, but the political will to reach agreement with Turkey that does not exist is even less available for making the decisions, the hard decisions that are needed to free the Iraqi economy from the shackles of socialism and to free the Iraqi entrepreneurs. That will translate into migration. And I guarantee you, ladies and gentlemen, Iraqi migrants are not going to China and India. I don't need to say more. So, are Iraqi politicians aware? Yes, some of them are, but the decisions are hard to make. Where do we go? I think privatization, I believe that the economic model of the United States is something to look at and learn from. Some people say, oh yeah, you want to have Texas here? Okay, let's learn from the mistakes of Texas and what they did and try to prevent it from happening. But this is a problem, an opportunity disguised as a problem, because of the fact that the politicians don't have the ability to make the decisions. We technocrats need to come up with practical decisions that are that will be motivated and financed by the private industry, by private investors, and be in waiting for when the crisis is beyond solution. And that is when our ideas will be implemented. And I think I've taken enough of your time.
You have put us in a very difficult position, Dr. Azzam. Yeah, I think
I have more time. I can talk more if you want.
No, please. That was more than enough. To go in the direction of the non-availability of solutions, I think would disturb our efforts.
So let me just take one more minute of the
time. Give us some hope, please.
Okay, I'll give you hope. I am working right now on an idea that, everybody talks about food, water, energy, Nexus. That's a strange phrase. What does it translate to? Think of the following. A hamlet of, say, 100 families will generate sewage. If we can create some sort of a governance criteria for these people to get a loan from somewhere, to collect the sewage and then treat the sewage using phytotechnology method, i.e. natural methods. Slow, but that's how nature works. You take that water and you feed it into irrigation boxes. And I'm talking about what's the name of it? The irrigation method is not hyphonics, it's high tonic. It's a method that is hypotonic, and it's increasing in availability and cheaper in price. And that will save approximately 80 to 90% of the water that we lose to evapotranspiration from the leaves, right? Where do you put these? You put these under photovoltaic cells. The photovoltaic cells can be used, and we have a lot of brackish water in Iraq, can be used to push water, create hydrogen. I mean, okay, everybody is going toward hydrogen for energy. We can do hydrogen, we can do batteries. But the point of it, we can create micro or village level cooperatives that will take care of treating sewage, treating water for supply, and produce food for the villagers. That's water, food, energy nexus. Even if that does not make money, even if this method does not make money, I will sell that to politicians by telling them, if we feed good water, if we give good water to people, you are going to realize this as a benefit to the state by reducing healthcare. These are things that cannot be touched, but the problems that we have in southern Iraq is that everybody has gastrointestinal problems because of the fact that sewage is dumped directly into the water, and what I talked about as far as water delivery. So what we need to do is not invent the wheel, but implement the wheel. All these technologies that I'm talking about have been implemented elsewhere. Jordan has a couple of these things. All we need is to teach the Iraqis to do it and not depend on the government to do it, because the government is broke.
Okay. I think privatization is much needed in Iraq and elsewhere. But in the meantime, between privatization and state governance, we can also talk about cooperatives, we can talk about mutual administrations that can share some of the responsibilities in production and making the economy work. Can we go?
I would like to receive questions that will cut me at the knee. I like to be challenged.
Yeah. Can we leave your questions to the end, please? So I can have Dr. Lawrence speaking. Yes, Dorson.
Sure, thank you. And Dorson, shall I share my own? Shall I share my own screen? He's talking.
I think, how many minutes would you take, Dr. Lawrence?
I can take less than 10.
Oh, no, make them 15 then.
No, I can take it. I can take it in 5.
No. Very good. Okay, I will make, say we take 15 minutes with Dr. Lawrence. Give us, because your topic is very, very needed at this stage, sir.
Okay. Dorson, I see Dorson is talking
about what Turkey should consider in this respect of mutual cooperation and the term.
Okay, you should be seeing my screen here.
Okay.
And I hopefully, are you getting my screen? You should be. Okay. All right, have it. And so I'm very pleased to be invited here. Dorson found my book that is now nearly 10 years old, Strategic Water for Iraq. And that's available online. I can send copies as PDFs. And I've also filed about a 7-page memo about this presentation to have more time. So I'm going to move fairly quickly through the main points here. The topic, I decided, a role of Turkey. I have some suggestions based on my experience in the region. I will also tell you that I have not been to Turkey since the World Water Forum in Istanbul, and I have not traveled in the region in a long time. I'm not stayed close to the infrastructure developments, but I think there's some points that can be made in this presentation. And I looked at your own presentations talking about the technological advancement, climate change. There's been some great points made here in this presentation. I found a recent article by Kibaroglu and Sayan, and she describes it as an imperfect peace as the situation for transboundary water matters in the region. And I'll mention that most of these photos are my own from travel. There's Batman Dam on the Tigris. And I believe that the most significant developments in the region worldwide on transboundary waters relate to data, science, and diplomacy. And I teach a course on this at the University of Washington now. And this connection is becoming increasingly important. And I'm going to go through, briefly give you 2 important developments on the Mekong and the Nile that demonstrate what's happening. And these results of these new monitoring systems, these remote monitoring systems, are very controversial. And the Mekong Dam Monitor, recently released by the Stimson Center, and the site, it's easy to find online now. It's a platform using these remote sensing and GIS analysis, near real-time reporting, and they are getting data that's never been before available. I will also mention that the data is not just water quality, but it's all, somebody's got a mic on, but the data is not water quality.
Excuse me, Dr. Lawrence.
It's
can the audience put your mics off, please?
okay. But these new platforms do much more than water quantity, but they're moving towards even groundwater issues and water quality issues. As you know, Mr. Alwash knows, salinity is the huge issue for Iraq, much less, even more significant than water quality. So somebody needs to mute their mic.
Maybe you can you can mute her. You can maybe mute her.
Yeah, I will.
The organizer.
We will do. Okay.
Okay. And here's this just a brief shot. Look at what the Mekong Dam Monitor recent release is doing. A tremendous amount of information on a very complex system. And of course, the Chinese dams upstream are the significant parts of the in the Mekong Basin. The other thing that I'll mention, I know we have a gentleman from Tanzania here. He might be interested in this. Tanzania is one of the riparians on the Nile. My own university, that's my W in the up corner there, engineers at my own university, University of Washington in Seattle, have developed a marvelous new project on the Nile Basin, a monitoring system called NIBRAS. And it gives a new look at water quantity and water management. Here's an example. You must all know about the Grand Renaissance Dam, which is causing great concern to Egypt. And this NIBRAS project has extraordinarily accurate look at the flow and the fill rates for the Grand Renaissance Dam. Absolutely remarkable. Data not before available. Now anyone can click on this and get the fill rates of the Grand Renaissance Dam. So my point is that the water and politics, we've mentioned this, and you all know that that data has always been political. On the Mekong, the U.S., which is the U.S. State Department, is hosting part of this Mekong Dam Monitor, and the U.S. has recently been accused of surveillance tactics of another state's sovereign projects and gross interference in China's international affairs, merely by putting data online. Quite remarkable. On the Nile, I'm uncertain whether Egypt and Ethiopia are willing to accept this objective data that's available through remote sensing. So it's fascinating to see what the release, the monitor of data is going to do on the political and the diplomat side. So finally, I believe there's a new era of data collection and science. And we all know that Turkey has a sophisticated system of monitoring and managing its infrastructure. But in my view, Turkey has been historically reluctant to share its water data. That's my view. You see that point made in my book. But the point I'll make in this presentation, perhaps the most important one, is that water science and remote sensing are quickly getting ahead of the ability of any nation to control its water data. It's happening. And by the way, that photo is my colleague Ed Erickson down on the near Urfa in 1997, my first trip to the region. In short, I think that this collection and distribution of data is the next big thing, and having to deal with finding ways to deal with with cloud computing, with this vast amounts of data. And diplomacy has always been a matter of finding the right opportunities. And so going back to my book from 10 years ago, my partner Erickson and I, we made a recommendation. We made a lot of recommendations in that book, most of which we also assumed that Turkey, Syria, and Iraq would be in a position to effectively conduct relations between the three. And that, of course, there's so many difficult things in the region. But our proposal, in short, is this idea for a regional hub, and we developed that a little bit. And the Isibad is a name we came up with, modeled after Isimad, which is in the Himalayas. Some of you familiar with this organization in the Himalayas, and there's a structure. It's not a real structure; it's a proposed structure based on the one in the Himalayas. And my argument, my theory, Erickson and I, is that Turkey could establish, could host a regional hub that would deal with these issues, and that's a proposed suggestion. Those you can get copies of this in my material. In conclusion, there's my photo of Karkamish Dam as I travel through the region, and so my conclusion is, without Turkey's participation, these new platforms are likely to be established by external actors outside the Turkey, and I think Turkey could take a lead in establishing or hosting such a hub, and this would be the best way to deal with the challenges that we've all talked about in this presentation. And there's my email, and there's my presentation. Is that the shortest presentation so far?
Yeah, thank you, Lawrence.
That's
Professor Lawrence. I think in Turkish we say az and öz, which means short and to the point.
All right.
Thank you very much. Now we can spare half an hour. Can you all spare half an hour of your time? So we can have some discussion, so we can have the opportunity to draft some valuable points to put on a golden tray and present it to the politicians. Can we do that? Okay? Okay. So,
may I say something?
Yes, please.
Rick, very good presentation. I think I know the man which you are standing by you on the region. He's from DSI, State Hydraulic Works. Huh?
Yeah. I figured he'd still be connected there. I think he has a degree from University of Arizona. He was our host there.
Okay, my question is related with the geopolitics, not the techniques. Can you put the geopolitics on the hydropolitics relation in the area? How the geopolitics will be effective from now on, from your point of view? I mean, you are a lecturer, so that, I mean, just like Azam is speaking very freely, just like me, and you can speak very freely on geopolitics.
Yeah. So who's going to, this question is to Professor Lawrence, isn't it?
Yeah, Rick can answer this one, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Well, of course, the geopolitics, I think Martina mentioned that, well, there's some things we can't say here. Speaking only for myself, I think this is the most difficult part. And I've not been watching very closely the data science in this in the Euphrates Tigris, but I can tell you it's moving so fast and it's outpacing the geopolitics. China's very angry about the release of data. Could this happen in this region? Perhaps. Would it? So maybe I'll throw out a question. I haven't been watching very closely. Would an absolute thorough release of all the data, flow rates at every Turkish dam, flow rates leaving Turkey, and the salinity rates of water leaving Turkey. If you had that, if I had a magic platform, I do not. How would Turkey respond to a platform that would release all that data of water flow and salinity rates just leaving Turkey?
Yeah, okay, Azam,
Suha
please.
Bey. Yeah, Suha Bey.
I would like to talk.
Mr. Lawrence, do you remember the joke about the cowboy who was able to say what was the result of 2 plus 2? He was
He knows
shocked
too much, huh?
because he knew too much. You know, we diplomats are not, of course, experts in anything, and we are not academicians, but we are trained to try to see inside of what our interlocutors are trying to say or trying to hide. While listening to your presentation, first of all, I congratulate you for 2 reasons. It was very short, very much up to the point, as Mr. Jaluga said. And also it had a lot of hidden information, which most probably by pure chance, I was able to recognize some of them. First of all, we now understand that the message is very clear. If you don't do it, we will do it for you. This is exactly what I was trying to point out in the course of our first meeting, and was trying to emphasize the need for the regional actors or states to take the matter in their hands. Otherwise, the others will try to take the matter in their hands and try to make us accept their solutions, which Mr. Azam was referring to a couple of minutes, that we should try to achieve the rapprochement between Iraq and Turkey, and among Syria, Iraq, Iran, and Turkey, before others do even more to stop this rapprochement. In short, I think the matter just boils down to the fact that the key word is cooperation. And the quality or the way of cooperation or the manner of cooperating should easily be summarized as cooperation among the regional countries. This is what we need most. I thank Ms. Martina Klimas and the others for making it very clear for all of us that the humankind is running fast into a deep crisis due to many developments like climate change and others, biodiversity, and all the points referred to many of the speakers today. And unless we are clever enough, which I'm afraid I'll make the picture even more dark if I say the humankind does not seem to be very wise. Unless we try to be wise and clever, we will be in deep trouble. Wise and clever simply means that we see into the future in a very bright way, if I may put it that way, in a very clear way, or clear manner, to recognize the upcoming issues and problems, and try to find solutions, decide on solutions, and try to apply these solutions before it is too late. I don't want to take much of your time, but there is enough for all of us to be able to do such a thing, or to take this such a way But I again repeat, I'm afraid the humankind will not be able to show the wisdom to do what should be done. The result will be an excellent outcome for the nature and for the earth, but not for the humankind. Most probably we will finish ourselves by our own lack of wisdom, and then the nature will start anew everything as it did in the past all 5 or 6 times. I'm afraid if, I'm sorry, especially I'm sorry for Mr. Jaluka if I made the picture very, very dark, but there is still time and there is still hope. All we need is a little bit of more wisdom. And when it comes to solutions to the problems we are facing right now, I again repeat, we need cooperation. We need the cooperation among the regional states, first of all. And I'm sure we will be able to do it if I intend to. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Omar.
Luis is raising hand.
Yes, please.
Okay, but I will give him permission. But let me say that 2 days ago, the president of Turkey, Mr. Erdogan, said that we are willing to use water not as a weapon, but as a means of cooperation. And he was saying that in the water forum, which they are holding at the Turkish government. So this is a good start, can be used. And there are many, many ways of achieving this cooperation. For instance, the Mosul Dam is in a very dangerous situation. If you leave the water, if Turkey releases the water of the Tigris to go into the Mosul Dam, suddenly the dam will be destroyed, and it will kill 1 million poor Iraqis downstream. So why not cooperate? Why don't we store the water in the Ilısu Dam of Turkey while we repair the Mosul Dam? This is a very simple thing to cooperate about. And everybody will be happy at the result. So who's going to add something to this? Mr. Dursun, are you adding, or Mr. Lawrence?
Mr. Lawrence is a guest. Please, Rick.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I think the Mosul Dam is fascinating. I've taken a close look at that, and I know there's a lot going on. There's difficulty of pumping grout into the ground to keep it from collapsing. I think the Mosul Dam problem is complicated. I had not thought of retaining water upstream to allow repair. I think that's $1 billion project. Maybe Mr. Hawash knows, what are the chances of getting money to repair the Mosul Dam?
Frankly, I have been advocating this idea of storing Iraqi water in Turkish infrastructure for quite a while, and have been accused of treason for selling Iraq's historic rights. So when I talk about certain people don't want rapprochement, I come at you from practical experience. That said, the Mosul Dam idea for Eliso, I published that back in 2016 at the Wilson Institute, and again I was accused of treason. Set that aside. That's not the issue. The technical solutions are possible. I further love the idea of this remote monitoring. I submit to the hosts here that they advocated. You, Dr. Lawrence, pointed out that Turkey might have a problem with that. I submit to you that free data may actually help the Turks make their point clearer. The Turks have been saying Iraq wastes money, wastes water. I mean, we waste everything, but Iraq wastes water. And Iraq says, no, this is our historic right. This is how we've been doing it. with remote monitoring, the case can be made very clear to both sides. Now, the problem with remote sensing is that you need on-the-ground calibration. I mean, yes, I know science. I know just enough science to be dangerous, right? I mean, I do have a PhD in civil engineering, and I've done remote sensing, although not recently. The point, though, is that free flow of data was punished by execution in Saddam's time. It was considered an economic crime to release data. That mindset tells you the way the Iraqi state used to think. Now, I don't know whether that's available in the same thing in Turkey or not, but the free flow of data will help make the ultimate consumer knowledgeable. Iraqis are not really aware of the kind of the Iraqi population is not aware that there's a problem, let alone how big the problem is going to be. So the free flow of data and creating a place that people can go for that treats everybody. I mean, I would set this place in the United States, the data center, and let the Turks complain about the piece of data. Let the Iraqis complain about the data. Okay, we can fix it with calibration and make information available. More importantly, we can also modify it to predict how much wheat is going to be produced from certain areas. We can actually show with practical science how the water is being used properly or improperly. That's what, because the biggest bang for the buck in water savings here is storage for flood control and storage for irrigation, and those are easily calibrated and easily done. So I submit to you that actually this is a project that I can actually even include the groundwater situation in Iraq and in Turkey as well. So I'm for it. If I was the host, I would put it in the recommendations because it will help everybody. Turkey might not want to have the information flow from about the flow from the dams freely available, but it's really cheap science. That anybody can do it. Actually, right now there are free sites that you can go to, but you have to. It's not centralized, so you have to bring in the data. But you can monitor what's happening in Turkey. What you can do is in Iraq, where you actually you have to estimate how much evaporation is happening on this canal, how much percolation is going in, how much water is going down underneath the Mosul Dam. All of that is information that is going to need calibration. But data is the key, and data with the purpose of informing the people, i.e. the voters. They have to know what the reality is for them to help those politicians that are willing to implement the hard solutions, the hard political solutions. I'll leave it there.
Okay.
Luis,
yes,
Luis,
yes. I would like just to share some data, maybe to discuss afterwards. Just to share data of research that we did in Syria, in the region. This research was based on Syrian statistical data of Euphrates River and the Iraqi Ministry of Water Resources, and a lot of field works, geographical field works in the region, since Turkey to Iraq. So we could see that the same quantity and quality of water that releases from Turkey to Syria is the same quality and quantity that Syria releases to Iraq, with a slight highest level of salinity, because being this flow, the precipitation is lower and the evaporation is higher. So it's normal, it's natural that the salinity increases.
Luis, you also have the drainage water coming back into the river, so don't forget that.
So, in the Damascus Protocol, we could analyze four decades of flow. And this 4 decades of flow, we found 3 years that the Damascus Protocol was not respected. I mean, the Damascus Protocol it established that Turkey has to release a minimum of 500 cubic meters to Syria. And this was didn't happen 3 times during some specific dam fillings, but soon after coming back to higher levels, higher than before inclusive. So after analyzing all this data, and very important, the UN inventory of water for Euphrates River Basin gave us data from the beginning of the last century, and we could notice a very important thing, that the same pattern that exists now in Euphrates did exist before the construction of any dams. That means it's a couple conclusion that the pattern of the river is much more natural than derived from human interventions. So I think we have a very, very good potential in this region to create a path of peace, because protocols have been respected so far, and most of changes in quality and quantity of water is due to natural aspects. That's the conclusion we could draw after studying 40 years of river flow, climate, precipitation data, evaporation rates, and irrigation projects, and crossing all of these data. That's the results. I am Brazilian. I am not, I don't have a biased perspective in the region. I am not, I'm not in favor of this side or that side. I did the research as, you know, as someone from outside studying the region. So this is the results. You may not, I have many colleagues in Iraq. They send me data. They send me pictures. The Ministry of Water send me data. My colleagues from Hilla University, Hilla is in central Iraq on the border of Euphrates. They send me data of the river there because I couldn't go. I couldn't get a visa to go. It's the only country I couldn't make a field work so far, but I'm going there. I'm going there in the end of this year. So I worked in a secondary data sent by my colleagues from Hilla and from the ministry. So you may not agree with these results, but this results is very coherent with the data and the analysis of this data. It was a work defended here in the University of São Paulo. I have to, you know, to defend these results. So that's it. I would like just to share some data and with you to discuss.
Comments in the comments side. Okay, Dursun, you saying something?
No.
Or shall we leave the speakers? So Omar, please.
Martina, or Suhabe, but first Martina.
I yield to Martina.
Thank you. I just have a very quick comment. I think a very important discussion on the data and communication. I would like us to remember that I think the data is already there, but the question is how it will be distributed and how do we get it to the people that they need it. If you think of the farmers who are preparing for droughts, if you think of these working in key industries, what are the channels? And here we need to support the government into becoming better in distributing this data and sharing this data. And this is not a problem only in this region. We have this very state-of-the-art data opportunities, but if it doesn't get to the farmers who can prepare for droughts and then who will subsequently be vulnerable, it doesn't really help us, in a long term. So very important to think, how will we share the data? How we will share it in a way that the people can prepare and be more resilient. And then I do have a very small comment on the discussion on the Mosul Dam. Again, like some of these boring things don't get into the news, but you know, like Iraq actually did contract a Italian company called Trevi, who's been working with the Mosul Dam for a long time, and I think it was supported by the World Bank. It was a very expensive effort, and the dam was just built at the wrong place in the mid of 1980s, and since then it's been continuously they tried to repair it, and then of course it is an issue, but it's also been I would suggest you, if those of you who are very interested in this topic, to really contact the US Corps of Army Engineers. They've been working with that projects, and they were the ones also helping with doing research and assessment and data. So they have the most relevant and updated information. And if you want to know more, also look into the project done by the Italian company Trevi. So just to like add this, and then if you have any suggestions on this, like how do we get data to more of, you know, the end users? How do we get it to household level? How do we get it to the small farmers? I would be very interested in your ideas. If there is anybody in this meeting who actually has some suggestions or who's been working with that, please let us know. Very interested to hearing.
In academic dimension, I mean, just well, our work is to research and publish our researches. So the diffusion of data is through papers and books. That's what we can do. And Mr. Dursun Yildiz is helping us to a lot. Since before publishing, helping us a lot through the Hydropolitics Association. So I can't do more than publish a paper in a journal or a book. I can't do more. I mean, in my profession. Yes, Mr. Omar.
Thank you very much, Mr. Omar, please.
Yes, just in short, first of all, I would like to go back to the presentation of Mara Tignino. She referred to the Turkish approach and proposal of the trilateral connection between Iraq, Turkey, and Syria when it comes to data collection and data evaluation. From this point, I would like to go back to what Mr. Bitar, Antonio Bitar said, and I'm thankful to him. This is what I'm going to say is not to defend the stand of Turkey on the issue, but to just to make that he put the picture very rightly before us. In fact, the dams in Turkey for the time being is helping to keep the flow of water into Syria and Iraq in a very irregular form. And it will keep on doing this for the near future, because most of these dams are, for the time being, at least, used mostly to produce energy. So not for irrigation. In fact, in the beginning, they were taught the weight should be on the irrigation, but this is not the case for the time being, at least. And on this point, I remember something which the late President Demirel said once: "What are we going to do with water? Are we going to put it in our pockets? So we cannot keep the water in our pockets. We have to release, and we are releasing this.
There is a limit.
But the issue is, I'm going to back now to what Mr. Lawrence suggested. His suggestion of this data collecting and sharing body is, in fact, exactly what we suggested in the beginning, years and years ago, to Syria and Iraq. I think we have to start from this point, which comes back to the issue and idea of cooperation. So as long as we find ways to cooperate the regional countries among ourselves, we can be sure that we will find ways out to the issues we are going to face with. One last point for Mr. Azam. While he was making his first presentation and the attitude of the politicians and the lack of the politicians' willingness to make the difficult decisions. I thought he was talking about Turkey and Turkish politicians. So it is always and everywhere is the same thing. Thank you very much.
Nadia is raising hand.
Yes, thank you. And struggling to unmute. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, just maybe 2-3 points that comes on in the discussion of Dr. Alwash and also Dr. Klims on disinformation issues. So maybe you would be interested to know about there's one project that is run by the Water Diplomacy Center at the Jordan University of Science and Technology. And they're conducting a case study on the Yarmouk Basin. That would be maybe interesting in terms of methodologies. They've been collecting quite intensively on all different aspects of the basin and compiling a strong hydropolitical study. So maybe, yeah, Martina, that could be interesting for you. Also, your question on the issue of informing the communities. I think more than informing in their methodology, they're really involving the community. So they're fully part of gathering information, and they're the main person, living also in the basin. So they have been collecting a lot of how people live in the basin, what are their interests, the struggle, etc. So it's a bit more than informing, but really also having them from the beginning on board. And one point that struck me in your different seminar, and thank you so much really for having this series of seminar. It's the amount of knowledge in the region. Like there's so many strong centers. I think we're all pulling in the same direction of cooperation. And I would really see, I mean, as also Switzerland, we're supporting this Blue Peace initiative. We have a whole track on education, and of course, the Geneva Water Hub is one of our partner. And there've been a lot of discussion on having networks of university in the region, and I think that would be an excellent opportunity to have a strong connection between these different universities in the region. And that answers a little bit of this interface political science. And I think we can have a richer dialogue when we witness a strong network of university in the region that can really nourish the political decision-making processes. So that was a point I wanted to share with you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Miss Nadia.
Before going there,
but let me just ask her to make her affiliation. Where are you working? Whom are you working for, and where
So I'm working for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Switzerland, for the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation, and I'm in charge. I'm sitting in Bern. And we are supporting different partners in the region in their promotion of water and peace, water diplomacy in the region. So it's in Lebanon, Turkey, Iraq, and Jordan we're active in. Yes.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, Mr. Dursun Yildiz.
Only a few words. Nadia.
Yes.
Your approach is very, very clear and very effective. And before this webinar and the webinar which we hold in 2-3 weeks ago, we invited every institution. And I tried to find their telephone number. I made a telephone call to them, really, believe me. But it is interesting that most of the time, we couldn't get any positive answer.
Yeah, I think there are not so many actors surprisingly involved in regional dialogue in the region. Yes, so that's why I think your initiative is really precious in terms of building this network in the region, because it seems evident, but it's still weak. So thank you.
Thank you. Mara.
Yes, thank you. Yes, no, I think also from an international law perspective, the exchange of information, one we can ask, we can say there is an obligation to exchange information, but now, with the new technologies, I mean, the technical data they are provided, even without having an obligation coming from international law. The data arrive to the population, and also hopefully we have also publication research that includes this data. So I think it is very important to raise the topic of the inclusion of the population, the citizen science, that really it comes from the citizens, this data. And also I think it is important to raise the issue of transparency, so that we know how these data they come from and how they are produced. So it is important also to read the exchange of data through the lens of transparency. I think this is very important. And I have a question to Luis that so it makes this distinction between the natural and human intervention on the river flows. And I would like to know, sorry, I have a legal background. What do you consider as natural factors? Because
natural factors. Okay. Well, the Euphrates, I'm talking just about Euphrates River Basin. Well, it's very difficult to separate both because they have a lot of connections. So the first challenge is separate data. So the river basin, the Euphrates, comes from Anatolian highlands with melting snow. So there is a regime connected to the regional climate. It's not just so it depends on factors much bigger than locally, because well, they come from these highlands with a lot of water, and then it enters in Syria, which starts to get a very dry, not that very, but it's almost a desert. So, and then from Syria to Iraq, it enters in a real desert. So what happens? In this course from highlands to Iraq, first, precipitation rates come down from 150 millimeters to 50 millimeters in Iraq. 50 millimeters. This is a real climate of desert. First. Second, evaporation rates increases a lot. Increases from Turkey to Syria and because of the climate. So it's normal when we have a higher evaporation than precipitation. It's normal that the water gets saltier in this course. It explains much more the salinity than irrigation projects, for example. And another thing, the affluents, tributaries, a lot of tributaries in Turkey. In Syria, just 3 tributaries and small tributaries. It's kind of river, very small. And then in Iraq are virtually not tributaries anymore. So it's a diminishing of quantity of water naturally because of the characters of the basin. In a region like that, it's the opposite of here in Brazil, in the tropics, that the river gets more and more water downstream in tropical areas. In this region, coming from highlands with snow to a desert is the opposite. So this feature, this slight diminishing exists since the beginning of the last century, about the same rate of salinity, high salinity of, you understand? And there is another thing. In the Iraqi region, with the engineering construction, we have in the marshal areas, the evaporation rates are higher because the water is spread. They asked me, oh, but in the Turkey dams, we have a spread of water also, but the climate there is not that hot to increase the evaporation rates there. So basically it's just three things. And a dam has a limit of storage. After this limit, it has to release water. So we can't, sometimes we hear some news like fatalistic news that, we will block, we will block water from a country to another. It's impossible to do it because of the limit of storage.
Dr. Azam, please.
Okay, quickly, Luis, you're not
consumed the extra half an hour. Do you want? If I'm glad to be here for 2 or 3 hours more.
Okay.
But if you have time, I would like to Azam to have a short comment.
Just quick.
We asked Mr.
Yes, Mr. Azam.
You are not considering drainage of farms being dumped back to in the Euphrates. That all the farmers have increased, and now they're planting in the high Mesa, high Jazeera. That was never planted before until Tabaqa Dam was built. So please consider in your modeling the fact that there is drainage water coming in from farms in Syria and Iraq. Number two, the natural regime is that the marshes are dependent on the flood pulse. The flood pulse is gone. I can share with you a hydrograph that shows you the pulse of the river, and I can tell you that the driving function of the biodiversity of the marshes is gone. So
why?
Because the flood is what the biodiversity depend on. The flood comes in just in the spring, just as the bees are coming out of winter hibernation, just as the birds are migrating, but more important, just as the fish is spawning. So the hydropulse is part of the natural system. It's not just quantity, it's not just quality, it's also the hydrograph is important to consider when you consider natural. Okay, so please be careful. This is what the problem with engineers like me who think of water as a quantity. Water is not just a quantity; it's a function over time. It's a temporal time. So let's be careful with our conclusions. Thank you.
Yeah, I would like to share you some data here, but I don't think it's the case. I will send to Dursun this, and maybe you can put graphs and pictures and data in the Hydropolitics Association website.
Very good.
Yeah, but I will consider what you
make a small remark. Maybe Jean-Louis Olivier wants to make a short remark or no?
I'd like to thank you very much for this very interesting meeting. It was deepening the problem, which are tough and challenging. But I had some sister that died recently, and I had no time to focus on your
okay, sorry.
So I like to participate because I am very motivated, as you know. I will send you more details in mail message later on, but I cannot speak that much this afternoon.
Okay, very good.
I'm sorry.
Let her rest in peace. Mr. Dursun Yildiz will give us a concluding remark.
No, I mean, I think there are something, for instance, Rick can say something on all of that. I mean, I would like to hear from Rick more.
Okay. Very good.
I've said everything I need. This has been a great program for me. I appreciate it, and I welcome this.
May I make a proposition here? That, dear friends, I would say, we have had a very constructive discussion this afternoon here. It's morning in
morning here.
Western United States. And let's make this a start of a deeper cooperation between ourselves, and let us share our experiences. You can send us. For instance, we are going to write a concluding report about this webinar, which we will send back to you all and see what you say about it. And then we can put it on the net for everybody else to benefit from. And believe me or not, the governments are waiting for something from technicians like ourselves. They are waiting. So let's take this historical opportunity to do the service to the world, to nature, to the riparian states in this region. I don't know. I think there is a lot which we can do ourselves. Thank you very much. Thank you for, yes, Mr. Dursun.
Well, if you allow me to say something, I think it will be a bit darker than this situation after hearing all these things. But I had to say that, as I mentioned to the Rick by telephone conversation, and the 5th Brussels conference on Syria, a donor meeting, it was a donor meeting, is ongoing right now. Now, the meeting is seeking about $10 billion for Syria food security. Before the donor meeting, UN agencies made a media statements, which says very, very sad things. I mean, therefore, we don't have a luxury not to cooperate each other. They face increasing hunger and poverty, continued displacement, and ongoing attacks. They said, warning that 24 million people in Syria and its neighbors are threatened. That is 4 million more than in 2020. And more than at any other time since the conflict began. Across Syria, the pandemic has compounded the worst economic crisis since the conflict began in 2011. The local currency in Syria has crashed, and food prices have soared, increasing by more than 200% from last year. This is not my word. This is not all my word. The UN agencies made this statement about 1 day ago. And the 9 out of 10 people live below the poverty line, and in northwest Syria, close to 3/4 of the 43 million residents are food insecure. Food insecure. According to the UN, about 14 million people in Syria, more than half the country's pre-war population, need assistance. That is 20% increase from last year. The UN and other aid groups are seeking more than $4 billion for aid within Syria, and another 6 million is requested for the nearly 6 million Syrian refugees who fled their homeland. More than 3.5 million is living in Turkey. All this situation, maybe you know some of them, but this requires more attention for the regional security, and we, as Hydropolitics Association, are insisting on that. The measures to be taken can be classified like that. The urgent measures, middle time measures, and let's say long-term, middle-term, long-term. The urgent measures is that you cannot find peace and prosperity if they are in a hunger condition, in a very bad condition like that. In order to use the water to irrigate the system, I mean the land or something else, will not be helpful within a very short time. So during this period, we have to classify the measures, and we are supporting that. The region is able to come together and to find a, let's say, free trade area for food security, at least for the time being. And after that, a regional project can develop to achieve the food security and the water security as well. And but not only without putting all these concrete steps on the ground, it is not easy to accept that something will go how we like in that direction. The reality from the ground is that one. I mean, they are seeking $10 billion for Syria. And who will pay it? And if nobody would pay it, what will happen? Thank you very much.
Okay. So I think we can close this webinar if there is nothing else can be said. Mr. MRC, you were going to say something. You raised your hand. Hello.
Who?
MRC. It says MRC.
Yeah. No. It's okay, I think.
Okay. So thank you very much, everybody. I hope we will see you again. We will send you our report, as I said, and we will try to make... Mara, you want to say something? You're saying hello. Okay. We will meet many times. This is our third webinar on the subject. Maybe our next webinar will be on some very practical issues like the food security and how water management could help in this respect. Thank you very much.
And also, very big thank you, all of you. First of all, Dr. Martina, Dr. Mara, Dr. Azam, and Jean-Louis. Jean-Louis is writing to us, I mean, to give their perspective for the region. And also, Rick, thank you very much, really. I hope you will sleep very good today. And also, the other participants. Many thanks to you. And we, His Excellency, I mean, Ambassador Suhabey brought very very good approach for the solution of the problems. And we really appreciate for your attendance, and please keep in touch. Azam is always trying to do something for the region with very big ambitions, and I like his ambitions because we are together with him most of the time. I mean, because of the behavior, the parallel behavior. And really thank you very much. And we would like to keep in touch with you when we invite you for this kind of seminar. I want you to try to attend these seminars, because there is no world, there is no region, there is no another peace. The peace is peace, and solidarity is solidarity. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Joseph.
you. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Have a nice day.
Nice
Bye-bye.
to have met you. Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.